muted.
If you're comfortable unmuting and unmuting your mics when you're about to speak, that's the best. So if you're familiar with Zoom, and I apologize if that's overly obvious, but if that's easy for you to quickly unmute yourself, particularly in the Q&A when a question comes up for you, and obviously right before your speaking part as well, then that's best. If you can mute yourself and unmute yourself prior to speaking, that's ideal. Okay, with that, we'll now go live in. I'm just checking. All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are holding an operational information update on the current wildfire situation in BC. The province is looking to hold these staff-level technical briefings with media on a more regular basis, with another tentatively planned for Tuesday. Today's briefing will feature Curtis Isfeld, Deputy Director of Wildfire Operations with the BC Wildfire Service, Brendan Ralph, Director of Operations with Emergency Management BC, Don Roberts, Director of Communications for the BC RCMP, and Dr. Bonnie Henry, the Provincial Health Officer. Media may ask a question and may indicate their desire to do so by pressing *1 to enter the queue. We will initially be asking for initial questions. We will start the queue again if we have time for follow-up, so you will be limited to one question right at the start. With that, I'll turn it over to Curtis Isfeld with the BC Wildfire Service.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to speak with you today. Today, my colleague Rob Schweitzer and I will be providing you an overview of the provincial and fire center situation. As I'm sure many of you can appreciate, the situation in British Columbia is very dynamic. So for any specifics, I would encourage people to please refer to our website, our BC Wildfire Service public app, which contains a lot of the information and specifics about incidents around the province, and as well, certainly with our social media feeds on Facebook and Twitter to get the latest information. We'd like to talk to you today and provide three sort of key messages as well too. And one is just around the conditions, the current conditions in British Columbia, as well as how we're adapting our approach, prioritization, as well just a little bit around preparation of the public. So with that, conditions around the province continue to be and provide us with a fairly unusual weather pattern. We all experienced the heat wave of a couple weeks ago, followed by a series of thunderstorms that came through the province, resulting in over 200,000 lightning strikes in the province. Those conditions we find are typical of, we would find them typical of the conditions that we face in August. So essentially our fire season has been pushed forward approximately a month. So in response to the current conditions, BC Wildfire Service is continuing to prioritize its efforts with a primary focus around life and safety. In addition to life and safety, top of mind for BC Wildfire is crew safety and resource management. So we will be ensuring that we offer the responders appropriate rest periods so that those individuals are able to continue with the response, as this appears to be the type of season that's going to drag into the fall. We'd like to encourage the public to be prepared, and there's a few ways that the public can do that. So preparing in advance of an evacuation alert or an order can look like a few things. We'd encourage you to develop an evacuation plan for your family. Think about ways out of your neighborhood. We also encourage you to assemble a 72-hour emergency kit. Contents of those kits can be found on the EMBC website, as well on the BC Wildfire Service website. We also would like to actively promote FireSmart, FireSmart BC, which has plenty of information on our website, www.firesmartbc.ca, which will contain a lot of helpful information about how you can mitigate risks around your property and your neighborhood. And lastly, we'd like to encourage the public to be extremely cautious in engaging in any activity that could cause a wildfire. We maintain that human-caused wildfires are entirely preventable, and rest assured, they unnecessarily divert firefighting resources from our naturally occurring fires. So to give you a bit on the current situation and some of the numbers. So since April 1st, 2021, BC Wildfire Service has responded to almost 1,100 incidents, resulting in approximately 203,000 hectares burnt to date. To give you an idea for this time of the year, how that relates to a 10-year average, at this time of the year, we would normally be sitting around 209 fires and around 60,000 hectares burnt. So about 35% of total wildfires this season have been attributed to human activity. 48% of those have been sparked by natural causes, and the other 16% are not yet determined. Currently, there are 27 wildfires of note across 5 of 6 of our fire centers, and there are 309 active wildfires burning as we speak today. So just speaking to the situation and some of the resource challenges. The conditions obviously in British Columbia are challenging. What we're finding this year that sets it apart from previous years is that neighboring jurisdictions are also encountering the same type of challenging conditions, whether it be our national partners or our international partners. In addition, COVID has caused some complexities around resource exchange arrangements that we have with some of those agencies. As of today, CIFC, the Canadian Interagency Forest Fighting Center, was at a prep level 5. Our neighbors to the south in the National Interagency Firefighting Center are at a prep level 4. So what are we doing? Our efforts. So because current fire behavior is aggressive, our focus remains on initial attack. So new fire starts are the priority for our ground and our air crews. We currently have over 2,500 personnel engaged in this response, which includes almost 1,000 contract personnel, as well as 150 aircraft. BC Wildfire Service is actively collaborating with some key partners in this. So forest industry, First Nations, local fire departments, and associations such as the BC Cattlemen's Association for additional resourcing and equipment. It truly is a British Columbia response. In addition, we do have 118 out of province resources that have been afforded us through the CIFC process. And those have come to us in the form of firefighters, support staff, and fire origin and cause investigators. And they come to us from Quebec, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Alberta, Manitoba, Nova Scotia, and Parks Canada. Also, I would be remiss if I did not mention the federal support that's been made available to us through our support that's been provided with the Canadian Armed Forces and the Canadian Coast Guard. So the question is how will we do this? And I mentioned response prioritization. So with the current resource challenges that we have, we are unable to commit to all new ignitions, which means our focus at this point is on allocating those resources to values of life and safety. Crew safety will remain a top priority for our organization in these conditions. We are seeing fire behavior exhibited that is extremely aggressive, and crew safety will remain a priority. Lastly, I will just touch a little bit on the weather, which helps to sort of bookmark the situation. And our weather picture for the province, unfortunately, is little to no reprieve in the forecast. So particularly in the south, conditions will remain hot and dry for the foreseeable summer months. We will be offered a slight reprieve in the north come Friday, north of Prince George, with some low to moderate precipitation. With that, I'll turn it back to yourself, Tara. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Curtis. I will now ask Brendan Rouse with Emergency Management BC to give his update.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So Emergency Management BC is working with affected communities, provincial ministries, federal partners, and other emergency management partners to ensure that the appropriate response and recovery support is being provided to all necessary parties in the province. And from there, I'll start with some numbers related to the current wildfire event, but would ask you to note that this situation is dynamic. The numbers are changing rapidly, sometimes hourly, and there can be challenges in making sure that they are constantly fully accurate. Nonetheless, our best current situational awareness is that in the province, we have 30 evacuation orders, 51 evacuation alerts, over 2,800 properties on order, and over 10,000 properties on alert. But I would recommend and that everyone continue to check Emergency Info BC and their local channels for updated numbers because the situation is so dynamic and changing so rapidly. I think that all speaks to the fact that there's a lot of fire activity in the province, and agencies across BC are working hard to fight fires and to help those who have been impacted. And in particular today, I'd like to acknowledge the hard work of local communities and emergency support services teams across BC who are stepping up to support this effort. However, similar to Curtis, I'd like to also take this chance to remind everyone that they can play an active role in their own safety. And there's a lot that they can do and that everyone can do to prepare for the possibility of an evacuation order or alert. So you can make an evacuation plan and prepare in case you need to leave your home on short notice. Have a grab and go bag, make sure your car has at least half a tank of fuel, and plan ahead. Listen to local officials for communication about evacuations. Tune into your local authority's public information channels, as well as Emergency Info BC for updates. And in the event of an evacuation order, you must leave the area immediately. Not doing so put yourself, your family, and first responders at risk. So I encourage everyone to check out preparedbc.ca for more tips on how to prepare for all manner of emergencies, including wildfires. And once again, I would ask everyone to keep an eye on emergencyinfobc.gov.bc.ca for the latest information on evacuation alerts and orders, reception centers, and other information. Also have some advice regarding traveling in the province this summer. Given the wildfire event that we're seeing, ask that people please do their homework before traveling through BC. Check local conditions, particularly for evacuation and orders. And keep an eye on Drive BC to make sure roads are open and conditions are clear. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're unsafe or where your presence in a community makes a challenging situation even worse. And that's the end of my update.
Thank you very much, Brendan. I'll now hand it over to Dawn Roberts with BC RCMP.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Just a couple of things of note. A number of our local RCMP resources are working very closely with the BC Wildfire Service and, of course, the local and regional emergency operations centers to address evacuation alerts and orders. We're conducting door-to-door notifications, and there's some rental properties and recreational properties, as well as with our Indigenous communities as well. And we've gathered and gotten a lot of great assistance from the BC conservation officers in our communities, as well as local search and rescue volunteers. Everything has gone well to date, and we appreciate the time that everyone has taken with us in order to learn about the orders or alerts and make sure that they follow accordingly. Our Division Emergency Operations Center is active and operating, working really closely, particularly with our Southeast District and North District centers, because that seems to be right now where the area of need is, particularly for additional resources. So we have deployed additional resources, and we're also rotating out some of the resources that have been in place for the last few weeks. Primarily, we are focusing on the additional resources in the interior central BC. And again, we're ready should the conditions change or another need be established. Those resources that are on standby, they're being drawn from all around BC, and they're going to be deployed as and when necessary through the coordination through our Division Emergency Operations Center. We also have additional resources with our First Nations policing members, and they're conducting visits and also working closely with our Indigenous communities. And there continues to be a number of roadblocks and other things that are in place right now. So we are once again also echoing the importance of having a plan to remain informed and to be patient as we deal with the evacuation alerts and orders. And that's what I have for you today.
Thank you very much, Dawn. And we will now go to the Provincial Health Officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to talk about a few things today. As you know, not only with the wildfires and the weather that we're having, but also a larger number of people are affected as well by wildfire smoke. And we know that we are blessed with having mostly really clean air in British Columbia. So this is an experience similar to what we had in 2017, 2018, and even a bit in 2020, that smoke really affects how people are feeling right now. It's a complex mixture of fine particulate matter and gases such as carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, volatile organic chemicals. And it really, it makes it harder for your lungs to get oxygen into your blood. We know that wildfire smoke can irritate people, particularly people who have respiratory illnesses. And there are a few things that we can do to try and ensure that we protect ourselves from the experiences of wildfire smoke. I will say, although we're learning about the longer term effects of exposures, the types of exposures that we've seen over these last few years in the weeks to sometimes months worth of smoke, we don't expect to have a long lasting effect on most people, but it is something that can cause severe symptoms in the immediate term. Mostly it causes irritation, things like runny nose, sore throat, mild cough, and we all get that feeling that you can't breathe as well. And usually these symptoms can be managed without medical attention. People who have more severe symptoms, and these are things that we're warning people to be aware of who in your household may be more sensitive and susceptible to smoke, including people with chronic conditions like asthma, COPD or heart disease, diabetes, pregnant people, infants, children, and older adults, and some people who are on certain medications. Really important, we talked about the things that you need to have in your ready-to-go bag. For those who require rescue medications for their medical conditions, especially for things like asthma, you need to stock up to ensure you have those supply on hand when smoke arrives as well. The best way to protect your health from wildfire smoke is to avoid or prevent and reduce exposure. So things like having portable air cleaners with a HEPA filter, those things can work really well. Or going to an air-conditioned place like libraries, community centers, shopping malls. Not only are there cooler air in there, but it's cleaner air for the most part as well. During smoky times, people should keep their indoor air cleaner by closing windows and recirculating air, particularly if you have a forced air system, or using an air cleaner. It is important, however, to remember, especially with the temperatures that we've been seeing in these last few weeks, to not allow yourself to get too hot. And sometimes that can happen if you're closing your windows. For most people, overheating is much more dangerous than breathing smoke. So I do caution people to take the measures that you need to keep your house cool as well, or to go to an air-conditioned environment, whether that's one of the cooling centers or even a library, community center, shopping mall. One of the other things that we do know is that the 3-layer cloth or disposable masks that we've been using for COVID, those also can help prevent inhalation of some of the larger particulate matters in particular, and may help when you have to be outside during wildfire smoke. But again, making sure as well that you're not overheating. So it is finding that balance. And for some people, wearing a mask in the smoke will just increase their work of breathing too much. People who are working outdoors should consult with their occupational health and safety team. And really it's about staying indoors when the skies are smoky. Make sure you're not exercising outdoors during smoky skies, and taking breaks and keeping well hydrated. There's a number of tools that people can use on the current air quality and wildfire smoke forecasts on the Smoky Skies website, and I encourage people to look at those as well. And I'll just say one more thing. We mentioned some of the concerns that have made things more complicated because we're coming out of this pandemic, and COVID still is around, particularly in a number of our communities in the interior that are also being affected by wildfires and by smoke. And now is the time to make sure that you are immunized. If you have not yet been immunized for COVID, if you have to evacuate and you may need to be with elderly people or in a reception center for a period of time where other people are as well, it's important that we all protect both ourselves and each other by being immunized for COVID as well. And one of the things that we have done early on is ensure that the wildfire service workers were immunized as soon as we had vaccine available. So I'm going to leave it at that for now, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henry. A reminder to reporters on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You will initially be limited to one question. If you would like to ask a follow-up, please queue after your question has concluded, and time permitting, we will get to the follow-ups. A reminder as well, the representatives we have on the call are from 4 agencies: the BC Wildfire Service, Emergency Management BC, BC RCMP, and the Provincial Health Office. We'll now go to questions. The first question for today is Marcella Bernardo, News 1130.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking my question. I would like to speak to whoever is able to answer this. Why has no state of emergency been declared now that we're being told that this wildfire season is a month ahead of schedule?
Yeah, this is Brendan Rels from Emergency Management BC. I can speak to that. So thank you very much for the question. I can appreciate why a state of emergency is on people's minds after the last 16 months. But I want to draw people's attention to the fact that a state of emergency is primarily a legislative tool. And during this current event, a provincial declaration of state of emergency has not been necessary to provide assistance to people, to access funding, or to coordinate or obtain additional resources, including federal assets to support both response efforts and people who are affected or impacted by the event. The province is currently deploying all necessary and requested resources to respond to wildfires across BC, and the federal government and Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre have been engaged and are providing firefighting personnel, aircraft support, and other assets. Any declaration of a provincial state of emergency will be made on the advice of Emergency Management BC and BC wildfire officials, and a provincial state of emergency will be enacted if and when it's required. In the meantime, we continue to support and listen to the concerns of local governments and actively monitor the situation.
Thank you very much. For the next question, we go to Colton Davies, Radio NL.
There, yeah, Mark, thank you for doing this and for taking my question. Mine was really the same as Marcella's. I guess I wanted to ask the BC Wildfire Service then in this case. You mentioned resource challenges and prioritizing fires based on life and safety. We have 306 active fires right now. I mean, do you even have a ballpark or a percentage or an exact number of how many of those are being actioned right now and how many might not be? I know we've seen some fires too that have started like June 30th and a lightning storm, particularly in the Southern Caribou, and maybe were smaller at first, but have grown, and several have now led to evacuation orders after having a limited response at first. So can you just talk about the challenges there and maybe the first part of that question, if you had any specifics?
Yeah, Colton, it's Rob Schweitzer here from the BC Wildfire Service. Although I don't have the exact number of fires that actually have resources on them versus the ones that don't, I go back to what Curtis said, and you alluded to in your question. It's really about the value, the prioritizing of values, which right now is life, property, and people's homes. Although we have the 309 wildfires right now, we do have our incident management teams deployed. And so, for example, up east of 100 Mile House, we have an incident management team, which is an overhead team that can look after either multiple fires or a single large event. And they have, I think they have about 23 fires within their purview under that management team. So they are resourcing all those fires, and what they're able to do by putting them into a complex or aggregating them is be able to share those resources as things change, because it is pretty dynamic with the weather. So we are still, we're comfortable right now that the fires that are of top priority, the ones that are affecting communities, major transportation corridors, power lines, are ones that we have our resources on. And we'll continue to focus on that. And we have engaged with communities and with the forest industry to talk about some of those other non-life and property values, like timber, like other features on the land base that we're going to have to eventually get to. But right now, safety is the number one priority for the communities, and that's what we're focused on.
Thank you very much, Rob. I would like to invite reporters now to press *1 if you would like to ask a question or a follow-up question. The next question goes to Susanna De Silva, CBC.
Thank you very much. It's also to Wildfire. Just that you talked about reaching out for other resources and more crews. How many more, you talked about 2,500, I believe it was, that are working right now. How many more people do you want to bring online to try to get a better handle on the situation right now? Is there a target number? And also just to confirm whether or not all of the military personnel, I think, that were coming to Edmonton that would be available, if all of those have been requested, or how many have been requested, or if there are more coming soon.
Yeah, I'll take that question as well. And so, yeah, as you alluded to, we have about 2,500 personnel engaged currently, and we are actively looking for more. And so Curtis touched on a few of them in the opening, but with the forest industry, we are actively engaged with them, and they're providing us with their staff, their equipment. Same thing with Indigenous communities. They're providing us with some of their members that are trained or have background in firefighting. We're hiring them. Same with the BC cattlemen. So again, ranching is a big industry in this province, and we're making sure that we're utilizing those people that know the land base, like the forest industry and those Indigenous communities, to help partner with us and provide that support. In regards to the military, we are actively having conversations and currently putting in a request for those ground troops. I don't have the exact number right now, and I hate to speculate on that, but what I can tell you is that the federal government's been more than supportive with all of our asks to date, which has been mostly aircraft. And I'm confident that when we put that request in, or as that request goes through the system, we will get what we're asking for. We're also, I believe, seeing some other sustained action crews coming in from different provinces. It's a small number, but it's really what what other agencies are really trying to help support us because of the work that we've done over the years as a province to support them. So I would say everyone's trying their best, given their situations, to provide us with whatever they can to support the cause here in BC. But really, we are taking this approach as we actively look for out-of-province resources, that we want to exhaust every possible option within this province to make sure that we have as many resources on the ground as possible.
Thank you, Rob. Our next question goes to Mark Nielsen, Prince George Citizen.
Hi there, and thank you for taking my question. Unfortunately, I should start with an apology. I came in late and I didn't get Curtis's last name.
It is spelled, Mark. It's ISFELD.
Okay. And Curtis, you brought some good news there. It looks like we're going to get some rain, and that'll give us a reprieve in terms of smoke and so on and so forth. Would you be able to comment on the chances of lightning strikes as coming as a result of this as well? Is there a chance of that?
Sure. I'll preface it by saying I'm not a fire weather forecaster, but on the information that we get from the experts that we have inside of our organization, we are expecting a leading trough through on Friday, which may spark additional widespread lightning. A lot of that will be associated from the central portion of the province northward. And as I mentioned, I think in the intro, we are expecting some precipitation to come with those systems in the neighborhood of estimated 10 to 25 millimeters.
Thank you very much. Please feel free, Mark, to press *1 to re-queue if you'd like. Next question, Marcella Bernardo, News 1130.
Hi, before I ask my question, could somebody please send out an email with everybody's names and how to spell everything? Because this is the first time I've dialed into one of these and I don't have proper spellings and all that stuff. So rather than making everybody rattle off their names, I would really appreciate just someone sending an email with that information. The follow-up question I had was regarding concerns being raised by local ranchers, especially in the Kamloops area, about wanting to be able to help and being rejected. Has that situation improved at all, where we're seeing everybody working together to try to share equipment and, like you said, use the resources of these people who know the land, who know where their animals are, to help protect them?
Yeah, I can take that question. Thank you, Marcella. Rob Schweitzer here again. So in 2017, and coming out of the 2017 fire season with the Abbott Chapman review, this was one of the 118 recommendations, was around how the BC Wildfire Service and government works more closely with Indigenous communities, the cattlemen, and a number of other stakeholders. I've personally worked with Kevin Boone, the president of the BC Cattlemen's Association, over the last 2 weeks. He's worked tirelessly to assist us in actually resolving some of these early on challenges that we experienced. I'm very familiar with the situation that you're referencing, and I'm also very confident that I would say that has been addressed. And I think, as everyone can appreciate, when the season started so quickly and with so much activity so fast, it took a few days for everyone to get their feet under them. It's an emotional time. People's livelihoods are at stake. People are, and so in that particular situation, and there's been some others, I can't emphasize enough the support that we've got from the BC Cattlemen Association and the work that Kevin Boone's done to connect us with those ranchers, in hiring them as liaisons to help with finding cattle and moving cattle, as well as just engaging with that industry and the community. These are people that have been on the land base for generations, and they're a very important aspect of the economy. And so I'm happy to say that as far as I know, and I talked to Kevin even today, that we are in much better shape in that specific situation, and we continue to work on other ones around the province.
And for our next question, we go back to Colton Davies, Radio NL.
I guess just to follow up on my last point about what I was asking about there with resources. The south of Canham Lake fire started June 30th, and it grew in the last few days, and there's 400 plus properties evacuated from that. The Young Lake fire started June 30th by lightning and grew in the last few days, and there's 117 evacuations from that. And the Hamilton Mountain fire started and it took a few days before it took off, and there's 130 evacuations from that. Those are just some examples, but if more resources were available, I mean, would these fires have been stomped out sooner and not been able to grow drastically long after breaking out, and thus forcing evacuation orders?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Colton, in the sense that we have initial attack crews, as I think the majority of the province knows. So the 3-person crews that go out, and we've had that system for years, and we've had to adapt given some of the changing conditions that we're starting to see in the forest, and with weather pattern changes, where we'll actually send 2 crews at the same time. You're in Kamloops and you see the air fleet that we have here at the Kamloops airport. They're a big part of our initial attack, and so they've been here since day one. And as people in Kamloops know, they're flying all daylight hours to help slow these fires down so that we can get ground crews on them to put them out when they're small. The challenge that we're seeing this year than what we haven't seen even in 2017 is the extraordinary drought that we're seeing across pretty much the south half of the province. So you have that stress in the ecosystem followed up by maybe one of the driest springs on record in lots of parts of the central interior and the Okanagan. And so the ground is so receptive. And when we see that dry lightning, we could have had 10 times the resources, and we're not going to catch all of the fires when they're small. So what we haven't maybe done a good job on is we probably need to do a better job at reporting the ones that we are keeping small and putting out and moving on. But are these ones, and we're we're up to about just over 300 now, that have not been possible to keep small. And it's less about the lack of resources, it's because they grow so quickly. We have engaged some different strategies even over the last week, where we work with the forest industry as a team to put heavy equipment and our ground resources on them. And we've also engaged with the cattlemen, as I was talking about earlier, so that they can respond to some of these fires on our behalf while they're small. But even that is proving sometimes not successful, just given the incredibly challenging conditions that we're seeing in the forest. And the weather is just not helping us at all. So short answer to your question, it's probably less about resources and more about the conditions in the forest and the weather. But we continue to be really focused on that initial attack, because the more fires we can put out now, the more resources we can dedicate to these other larger incidents that we're experiencing across the province.
Thanks very much, Rob. A reminder to everyone on the line, we are aiming to hold another of these staff level technical wildfire briefings next week. Please watch your inboxes for information about that. For our final question, we go back to Susanna De Silva, CBC.
Thank you very much. Just sort of following on that and what I had asked earlier, just in terms of, do you have a goal? Like, what, in an ideal world, how many resources would you have on the ground right now? Is that a number that you are working towards? And sort of separate to that, have you also reached out to other former firefighters, former forest firefighters, to come back and help out again?
Yeah, so I didn't actually address your question exactly on the last one. We never target a goal. We seek the resources that we require currently and what we forecast our needs to be. And so that is why we have a whole group of people in our organization that are reaching out to our international partners and across Canada, because we will take the trained resources, as many as they're willing to send us. We'll take them now, because we know this is going to be a long season. So no to a target, but yes to we will take all the resources that we can get that are trained to our standards from outside the province. Within the province, we do actively bring back within our own organization, as an example, retirees, people to help assist us and provide either advice, support roles quite regularly, especially during these busy times. I did allude to some of the new ways of doing business where we've engaged some Indigenous communities across the province where they have fire in their traditional area, where they come to us with people that have either worked for us or worked in the fire business before, and we've actually put them under contract to work under our incident command system and on those incidents. Because we've recognized not only is it good to have the local knowledge on some of these real complex and challenging fires, but we need all the resources we can to be successful. And so we're not turning away anybody that's coming to us that has that background, that's coming through an Indigenous community or through the BC cattlemen or through the forest industry. We're not at this time hiring, people off the street or emergency firefighters. We're not at that stage yet, but we are also working very closely with our contracting community, who provide us with firefighters on the contract end of our business. And so those are avenues that people, if they have a background and have training and want to come and help and support, they can contact those contracting companies, those firefighting contracting companies, who we regularly contract every season to come support us.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you as well to all the speakers today. Thank you to media for joining the line, and that concludes